Don't think too hard about the
Yeah,
next invention. It's
it's
just
the new smack. Also, like the get rich quick stuff, like a big thing. Like a while ago, one of my buddies was talking about, um, like he's a teacher now, and he was investing in Bitcoin stuff and buying up a bunch of different like Bitcoin stocks and or even like the whole thing in Canada right now around legalized marijuana. People are buying up marijuana stocks. It's if everybody knows it's a good deal, then it's not a good deal, right? Like if everybody's going in,
yeah.
that just seems like basic economics. Actually, what the fuck do I know? I don't.
No, I get what you're saying though, and it's funny. This is now an episode about Bitcoin because I've been hearing about this shit. Not actually, I'll just touch on it. But a guy I work with, he's all about Bitcoin, and like so I'm now like I asked about it and like kind of looked it up, and it's definitely I feel like reached this peak. But you can't say that to one of these people that are really into it. They think it's like I think maybe you could still make money off it, but it's not gonna do what it did because everybody knows about it. It's like I don't care about it, and somehow I know about it. I never even tried to look it up, and now all of a sudden it's part of my life. To some degree, I don't invest in it, but so I guess what I'm trying to say is that everything has like a peak.
Yeah, like by the time you know something's happening or something's trending, it's dead or dying. And I think that also applies to kind of like the growth hacking stuff or how to be a creative or those type of blog posts or increase your Instagram followers by 10,000%. By the time whoever's writing a blog post on Medium about this like tactic, it's like not even a thing. And then it seems like everybody kind of gets fixated on that without paying any attention to the things that actually matter, you know?
And not matter in a sense, not just to get this success or whatever. It's like they're almost blinded by this dream, whereas the things that really matter, like, oh, this is perfect. We can go into about the art show. I was just talking about this with the art show. I used to, we do an event or something. The art show, let's say, or use this as an example, the U-Haul art show that we did in the backyard. For the audience, we rented a U-Haul. It's been done before too. It's not like a grandiose idea or anything, but we put art in it and showed it off. And it's less about that and more about my expectations of that show. In my head, I like envisioned all these people coming to it. It sounds ridiculous now and then so I was disappointed with the result because my expectations were just basically set in something that's superficial. Where the real value is that, and what really matters was that I put on this event and it was a success. We rented the thing, we found a place to put it. We rented the van, found a place to put it, put the art up, had people come out and that's all that really matters. And this expectation of all these people showing up is just it doesn't matter so with the new art show, I'm finding that that we're doing in Calgary, we got invited to basically do a little bit of our work on a plywood backdrop at an art festival, and my expectations now are that the work is good, and that I get to do something with a friend, and that's all I need out of it. That's the end, and I know I'm gonna get that, despite the outcome of people coming to it or number of followers or likes we get on our art show.
Well, and I think like that should only be the definition of success, because it's really easy to get like fixated on those aspects that don't matter. And what I'm finding like interesting is like I just finally got around to reading Just Kids by Patti Smith, which talks about like her relationship and becoming an artist in New York during like the late 60s and 70s, and there seems like back then or through the book and like the attitude, like obviously there's this drive to be successful and famous and on like for them like on the level of Andy Warhol or something, but it was just more important, and what the conversation was more around was like creating meaningful work and having like an impact on society, where it really seems for the most part the majority of creatives or artists now, it's not about that. It's about the transactional aspect of it, like having that successful byproduct like a large following or being able to sell your art for multi-million dollars and being like a household name, compared to making art that's having a meaningful impact or commenting on the times. And it's just, this is weird. So then it's like everybody's doubling down on the growth hacking and the tips and the tactics and how to artificially like inflate the appearance. It's like everybody's presenting themselves as being important before they're even important, or focusing on constructing like a lifestyle that showcases that, but they're not. You know what I'm trying to say?
No, I get it. The energy is being, invested. A lot of it ends up getting invested outside of the work. And, I think you have to invest some energy outside of the work just for, like the energy put into making this show happen. But that's not for a result other than it's a cool experience. And, but there was times where I wasn't like that, where I was investing energy into something like this for a result that I have no control over and ends up taking away from the work. For example, like, I ran ads and stuff, and I just found that the money would be better well spent buying a new paint marker or a new paintbrush or business cards even. At least then it's a business card has forced me now to go out in the real world to make a transaction, to actually talk with somebody and communicate with somebody and build a relationship, because whether or not that person buys something, I've created something much more valuable than just a quick like or even a quick purchase.
Yeah.
It's like a real investment of time and energy. So if anything, I always feel like people are hurting themselves by doing that.
Well, it's just short-sighted, and I think, but it's really tough and challenging not to get wrapped up in that, because if you're publishing anything online, like a part of all those platforms is your stats, right? Like how many likes is this getting? Like how many people open this email? Like how many views? Like how long did they view it for? It's all this like data that's coming at you, and when you're emerging and getting started, it can be really defeating to pour a bunch of effort into something, and then you stick it out online, and then it doesn't get traction, and then you stop doing the work. Yeah, and then the other part that gets me is like the reward system online of likes and engagement, the type of behavior that dictates, so there's certain things online that gain traction, and there's certain ways to behave online that's going to get picked up, but does that directly transpire into creating meaningful work? And also meaningful work in the time that it's created tends not to be the work that's popular at the time, so then if we as creatives are just like trying to get that social media engagement, like the result of that is we're going to be creating work that's ultimately meaningless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because well, I think you just said it all in that, and I think if you get if someone gets what you're saying, they get it, and if they don't, there's just maybe some time before it. Then all of a sudden it'll click. Like for me, I think you were telling me those things, and it didn't quite click until a later time where I knew what you were saying, but it's still in the back of my head. I was looking for these things that were meaningless and had no value in my life. And then I don't know, I think something clicked where it was like, oh, it is all about the work. That is all that matters. I like someone else's work, and that brings me value. Like I like or their art and what they're creating. Music. I never, when I'm looking for music, look how many likes this person has. I look at the music, and how I get to looking at that music is usually through seeing them or meeting them or some sort of honest interaction that happens. And if I like it, I do, and if I don't, that's okay. But it's not about how many likes or followers they have and any of that stuff. And so that is a bit of not a facade, but there's a word I'm looking for there.
Well, it's like getting it's like going on steroids to get biceps, or getting like implants, or like bicep implants or something. Like it's fake, and there's like shortcuts to get there, and to look impressive, but like, are you actually healthy?
Yeah.
And I think that's similar. And also, I think these type of conversations tend to land on social media a lot, so we should change the page. But it's like, it's just like such a big part of life as a creative. And I think for me, an ideal situation would to be not to have to do that at all. Like almost like have somebody that you can just like hand the work to and they do it, or have a program that blocks your ability to see any of like the engagement stats.
Yeah.
But also, I think in terms of like going back to this art show that we're doing next week at Big Slam, I think that's also a good example. It's like we have this opportunity because the organizers dig the work.
Yeah, which is like one of the, I think, knowing that, and all of a sudden it starts happening because you begin to appreciate that. And it's like, I'm just really excited that somebody was able to look at the work and say, hey, you should come do this thing. And I'm very appreciative of that now in my life, and of these organizers too. I don't think I would have had that before, that appreciation, which is insulting, to like somebody that says, hey, come do this thing, and you're like, I'm the best. Of course I should do this thing. It's like, oh, they liked it, and that means a lot, now. I'm really able to appreciate those types of situations for what they are. And that alone, just somebody asking and giving the opportunity is like a blessing, I suppose. I'm not religious, but when you start to appreciate things, I suppose you see the benefits of appreciating. And I don't know where I was going with that. I just wanted to state that I'm not religious. I don't know why.
I am not a Catholic.
It's cool though if you are. End story. I'll stop ranting about that.
No, I think it's fine to be appreciative and accept the blessings. And I think like that, like what you're saying there, like letting go of that sense of entitlement. Like I think I'm have been becoming like increasingly aware of. I think for the most part I'm pretty like a humble person, but there's like certain things, especially when it relates to creative work, that I'm a little bit pompous around. Like you're doing something for a client and they make a request and you're like, you're a fucking idiot, what do you know? I'm a creative god. And they're like, yeah, all right, man, just make my business card. yeah, and just like letting that go. Or you're seeing somebody that's at a similar level, but they're gaining traction, and you're getting pissed off at them. But at the end of the day, they're outworking you, and I think like that's a fun one. So when somebody starts taking off in the community, or other artists are pissed off and beaking off and
saying they sold out or
yeah, you
did
sold
this
out.
or you're no good, or no, that's a big one. And it's interesting because it comes from artists are a weird, wacky bunch because, and speaking from experience, and because I have this experience, I see it in other people. That, like you're saying, that sense of entitlement and that anger that comes from someone else becoming successful, it almost like you have to question, why am I really doing this? Is that why I'm doing this thing? Because that's not why I started doing this thing. As in, like, why am I making art? Is it because I want success? Or is it because I like making art? And if it's because you want success, that's, I think, what happens. And then also being comfortable with your art. I think artists are very insecure. I myself was. And when I started to become more and more secure with what I was doing, the less that happened. Because I know, well, that's not me. I'm doing my thing and I'm doing it as I wish, and open to new ideas. But it's not like if someone else is, because I'm comfortable with the work I'm producing, other people's success doesn't affect me anymore, or less. Of course it will. And some, I'm still human and certain things. But you get what I'm saying about like being comfortable. I think that comes from not being comfortable in myself. It came from that. I don't know about yourself, but
No, I think that's similar. Like, and I think for me and you and our creative collaboration or partnership, I really feel our biggest challenge is to work consistently, and to be applying that consistent pressure, and to be doing that, because it seems like our tendency is that we work in sprints, and you get momentum and you get people on side and they're encouraging you, and then for whatever reason you dip out. And I think, at least for us, it's not like an endurance thing. It's not that we can't produce the work. And I might be speaking for myself, but it's like not having the confidence in yourself for the work, or like a fear of rejection. It's like you don't want to send off that email or reach out to that for that opportunity, because they might call you a piece of shit or whatever. And like that, like that matters. So then you stop, or you hold your punches. And I think the people that are gaining the traction are the people that are fully committing to their practice, and fully committing to the fight, and like throwing all they got at it. Which I think for me and you, or at least for me, there's periods of that where you get frustrated because you're not doing anything, and then you work yourself up into this frenzy, and then you do that for like 3 weeks, and then you're kind of retreating back. But I think whenever we've been on that path and reaching out to those opportunities and putting out the work, like it just goes for us.
Yeah. No, I agree. Well, it's interesting. I actually do want to talk about what I'm about to talk about, and it just kind of came to mind. I don't know if we've talked about this yet, but all this talk about what you're saying, like, and where that comes from, to me, is from being afraid. You're fearful of, rejection and all these things. And for me, that's been an aspect in like all things in my life, not just the creative pursuit. And there was somebody online that had posted basically this idea that art comes from being like sad, and that if you're in that state you're a better artist or something like that, or being, you know, having this chaotic environment somehow makes you a better artist. And I thought that for a long time, hence why I did things to actually hurt my artistic endeavors more, like by drinking or being afraid to do the work or whatever. And there seems to be this idea that, yeah, like artists have to be these like run down, like alcoholic or drug addict individuals. But I starting to learn that that's not the case, and that I'm actually a lot more efficient, which makes sense, when I'm not drinking or doing these things. Like, for me, it took me a while to really see it, but one thing that happened, and it's kind of, I laugh at it now, but I had this painting that I was showing to Tara, and I was like, I don't know, I had maybe, I was drunk by that point, and I dropped the thing and put a hole in the damn fucking painting, and it's like, holy fuck, like, and like, too, looking back at my art, like, the style was kind of neat, but once I started taking those steps to slow down on that kind of stuff, it started getting much, much better. Everything, like, artistic wise. Even how I understood the art, what I was trying to express, all of a sudden I understood. So I was better at expressing it. Whereas before I was hiding from all these emotions and not actually understanding them. So how can I express that? How can I show that to people? I don't think I could. So.
Yeah, like, there's a lot of points you've brought up that I want to touch on. So first, the fear thing. Yeah, that's a big struggle. Like, just being scared of anything, really, and that fear can trip up your ability to show up and work. And I think the other part of that struggle with art, like, I was just having this conversation with like my partner recently, is that you don't have a boss around your practice. Like, there's nobody holding you to account, right? So it's easy to be, oh, I'm not feeling it today, or I'm scared, or I'm not inspired, so I'm not going to do the work with a day job. Like, I don't call in sick from my day job, like, and my day job's not bringing me any value except for like an income, right? But then there's so many days where I don't show up to the craft. I think it's around that fear, and like, how do you let that go or overcome it? And then that aspect of what it is to be like an artist. And I think because the professional artist has been a thing for so long, and there's these myths and these stories, that idea of, the struggling artist, and I'm starving, and I'm strung out on heroin, and I'm making greatness, is this stereotype that a lot of young artists, or artists in general, step into. And I think like that's a part of it. And I think the other part of it is, I think as like an artist, there's aspects that lend itself to developing those bad habits, or lends itself to having like mental illness or addiction or that type of stuff. Like, I think like as an artist, you just tend to feel the world in like a little bit of a bigger way, or you're a little bit more sensitive to that. And I think it's really easy to, use drugs or to fall into depression because of that. But I think in terms of being consistent and a professional, it's, you have to take care of yourself, and you have to be healthy, and making decisions to be in like unhealthy relationships, or like to fast live or whatever, doesn't actually lead to consistently good art. Like with like anything, like if you were a cage fighter and getting all drunk all the time, but then you're like raging, like you're not going to be able to, I don't know, put in the work and be healthy.
Yeah, you're not gonna outperform somebody who's got a clear mind. I don't think, or a clean body or whatever. Or clean body, I don't know what that means, but not on heroin. That's what I'm
Heroin's
trying to
bad.
say. Yeah, it's just like if you're able to like think clear, I think it's obvious that you're gonna be able to, and thinking clear is a strange thing because it's like not only does drinking, allow like fuzz your mind, I guess, or do stuff like that. Not dealing with things does that as well. I gotta insure my car next week, and instead of insuring it, I don't. What the hell am I going to be thinking about? Not art. My car's not insured, and I need it to get to work to live, or whatever. And it's like you gotta actually be, as artists, I think, more on top of things to create. Unless, I guess, maybe you make a painting about your car not being insured, and somehow that. But if you don't understand that, at least you have to understand why that's affecting you and why things are affecting you and what's happening in your life, or else people are gonna look at your art and not see anything because you're not able to see it, I think.
Yeah. No, I agree, but there's that aspect of, I think, when you're selling art, like in any way, you're selling the artist just as much, right? So, like creating that legend is like important, right? So it's more romantic or sexy when you're thinking about somebody like Hunter S. Thompson that's all strung out and like blowing stuff up and shooting guns off and all this stuff and making these novels compared to somebody who has a stable married life and lives in the suburbs and is like well balanced and whatever. Like there's no story there that's attractive, even if the novel is good.
Well, that's just the idea that, I think a lot of time, I think especially musicians, I feel like we've talked about this too, but either way, it's good. It's a good conversation. That the musician or artist is their art. I have an imagination. I can be outside of that. So yeah, I think that's the thing that's a myth, is that as an artist you have to live your art entirely. I think you have to understand your life so that you can express through imaginative thought what you've gone through. But so yeah, I guess like the romantic is like making that experience worthwhile for the viewer, romanticizing these things, these ideas or values that we're trying to portray as artists.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the fuel to it, the story. But Hunter S. Thompson, I've never met him. I don't know if that's all true. I can't say for sure that that's exactly how he was. I mean, I haven't read about him. Maybe somebody could educate me on that.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I've never met the guy either, and I won't because he's dead now. But
Yeah.
I have a bit of a theory around that. Is like Hunter S. Thompson created a persona that he would write through, and then I think at a certain point you become that character. And so for with me and my writing, like Hunter S. Thompson is definitely like an influence on me. Like I don't read any of his stuff now, but my older brother was really into him, and like I read a bunch of his novels around like 14, 15. So I think that just resonates. But the the place I write from is more in line with who I was when I was like 16 to 22, and you're a little bit more into the drugs and making questionable decisions compared to where I am now. But I don't think because I'm in a stable, loving relationship and I no longer have that like I'm not still struggling with my addictions, that like I've overcome that disqualifies the art from being authentic.
No, I don't think it does either. I think what is happening is that, well, I don't think you'd be able to write the way you do if it weren't for that stable, loving relationship. Personally, for your experience, I can't speak on other artists, but from what I've seen, and you being like, and maybe this is more of a question than anything. Do you feel that you would have been able to write, or at least write as much, even at the volume and at the level, if you were still doing what you're doing when you're 16 to 22?
No, I don't think so. And also just if we just look back at the history of our creative partnership, right? Like, because we've been doing this. Man, we should start counting the years, like a while, right? So when we put out Destroy the Internet, like I was, like just got out of like a serious, like meaningful relationship and was going through some heartbreak, and there was like a sprint intensity. So I think sometimes that can work, like roughness or heartbreak or struggle can spur you into action, but we quickly burnt out after that. And then I think in more modern times, like the output I've had in terms of writing and the work with CHUMP over the past year, where I've been in a stable, loving relationship and been having a lot of that support and like encouragement and understanding, has led to a higher level of output compared to the year prior, where I was in more of a sexy, chaotic, artistic relationship, right? Where it's, there's these highs and the lows, but then you're so tied up in that and torn, and then maybe there's bursts of inspiration or whatever that's coming out from that, but it's not a consistent output. Like, at least for me and my experience, my truth around it is when the personal life is organized and disciplined and secure, then it allows me the freedom to be chaotic and expressive and like very efficient with the creative work. But I think it's just also like that idea of like when you're struggling to survive, is that the environment that's going to be allowing you to produce work. I think having those experiences you can draw from to produce meaningful work, but like when you're just trying to eat, it's like making art's not necessarily the top priority.
No, I think I agree, like with what you're saying about being able to, because what I think is that, or what it kind of made me think about, was that there's no shortness of chaos in life, no matter what your circumstances are. So at least if you are in an environment that's good and healthy, then that chaos that comes to you, you're able to look at, analyze, and understand, instead of chaos coming into my life. I drink a beer, 10 beers. For me personally, that was my solution. I never understand that chaos. So in fact, I create more of it. So in that sense, maybe you create more experiences to learn from, I guess. But I think there's no shortness of experience in life, no matter what your circumstances are. So at least when you're healthy, you're able to actually approach it and look at it and understand it. That's like what I feel like you were saying. And so I definitely agree with that now. I don't know if I would have always, but agreed with that. Not
no, without a doubt. Like a few years ago, like this would be a thought I would have all the time. Like, you know, being like having the personal life where it's like comfortable and healthy is an example that you're losing your edge. And then without my edge, I can't create work, and how backwards that is.
I think it's just a sense of, I don't want to say, if anything, naivety or whatever. Is that a word? Close enough.
The wrong guy.
Being naive.
Yeah.
And which is essentially being immature. I just feel like immature has like a, but I suppose that's what it is. You just don't know. You think that that's the way it is, but I think once you step outside of these things, like, well, maybe not. And then eventually you're like, I don't feel that way at all. For me, that's how it worked. So it's good. I'm really excited that I'm able to look at things differently now.
Yeah.
Personally. Sure you are too. I feel like you've been kind of going that way for a while.
Yeah, like, it's definitely been a slow progress, right? Like, I've moved away from like drinking and drugs around 22, I guess. And I think now I'm just kind of coming to terms like with some other stuff, you know, getting a handle on it. And the other part that I'm currently like struggling with right now is like how hard I can be on myself, because it's like I have this expectation of the type of creative I want to be, right? And I really want to be like an A-level player, right? And like being in a position where you're able to help bring other people out, and you're continuing to have like a high output of work, and you're taking on these opportunities and making meaningful art. But then I feel to be there, it's like there needs to be like more discipline. Well, maybe not more discipline, but there needs to be structure and routine on the life. So then whenever I'm not like in that zone where I'm following through and holding myself to account of like the daily practice, or like exercising, or, you know, waking up early or whatever it is, I get very spirally and freak out that I'm not moving forward, which then has like a negative effect on the work anyways.
Interesting how that works out, right? Like this, you think you're helping yourself almost, like in that, like today I didn't wake up that early. I wanted to get up at like 6. I ended up getting up at like 8:39, and because I kind of had a headache, right? And it's like, well, I guess I have a headache for a reason, and like maybe I should look into that, deal with that. Like probably because I don't know, I needed to sleep. Maybe I'm just tired. I'm a human being. It doesn't mean I'm never gonna be what I want to be. If anything, taking that time to nap, like I know who I am, and I'm not somebody that's just like, you know, not to waste or something. That's not me wasting. That's me being, you know, taking care of myself. I think there's a balance there for sure. You don't want to like spend too much time, but it's all dependent on who you are and like what you need. And so yeah, it's like I have the same problem. I definitely am too hard on myself sometimes, where it ends up being damaging and not beneficial.
Yeah, like there needs to be some flexibility with that type of stuff to a degree. Like just yesterday, so I worked the day job Monday to Thursday, and I have to get up at 4 a.m. for the work, and like whatever, like during the work week, it's basically it, and then I'm not sleeping, so then I have this expectation that come Friday I'm going to wake up early and like have this good routine and be fresh for the work. But by the time you get there, your body just needs to sleep. So then you're like, okay, I'm going to like sleep in, but then you wake up and you're, God damn it, I didn't do it, and fuck, the day's ruined, and you're, it's
Then-
just stupid, man.
Even if you get up at like for example 11 or something that day, and you're thinking like the day's ruined, then it's a self-fulfilled prophecy.
Oh yeah.
The day ends up being ruined. But if you're like, well, I can do an hour. That's an hour that you wouldn't have done if you were thinking that way.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a good point. I agree with that. Because, 15 minutes is better than none at all. If that's what you got, that's what you got. And
Yeah.
you got to accept what you have to work with.
Well, I'm coming around on this idea of, oh man, who was the guy that was talking about it? I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast, and I think he was talking to one of the trainers of GSP, but the guy was talking about like training, and his big thing was just like being like consistent, like going, like showing up consistently, like not showing up and going balls to the wall all the time and then you're drained and you can't show up the next day, but like going in and giving it 70%. But if you're like stringing those together, you're going to, over the course of a year, be able to fit in more, I guess, like training days compared to somebody that's like every time they show up they're going balls to the wall. And I think that applies to the creativity. Like if you're just like, if you're able to show up, like for me, like if I was able to show up daily and just write a page, like to write a page is nothing. Like it's almost to the point where it's like a joke, but over the course of a year, like that's meaningful compared to what I'm doing right now, which is just not. Like I haven't actually allowed myself the time to write in forever.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. I think a lot of people could use that advice in many aspects of their life, just like you said, with the fighter training, and kind of makes you think too, like it's not all just about, like, we'll use the fighting analogy, the GSP as an example, that there are more things to learn than just how to hit really hard.
Oh yeah.
And so those days that you're tired and you go out anyways, maybe you're not like working your muscles, but all of a sudden you can work your mind and find the subtleties. And with creativity, there's many subtleties. You know, it's not just about finishing a gigantic piece of art. It's about understanding your art a little better, or
well, and also recharging and making sure you're consuming, I don't know, good media or like other good work. Like if all you're putting into yourself is like Instagram like feed, and you're not reading, or you're not taking the time to go to a gallery or check out like other art, like you're not going to be feeling that well. And then how are you supposed to, like then what are you drawing from?
Yeah, it's like, that's a good example. Like going to a gallery is valuable in a different sort of way. Like somebody gives you the opportunity to be in a gallery. You've never been to a gallery. How do you even begin to imagine what you're going to do there?
Yeah.
It's just going to be overwhelming and throw you in a spiral. Your brain will just be like thinking about all these factors. So
And just explode and die.
that's what I think. Yeah.
So then what's the next thing for us? We're doing this art show with Big next week.
Yeah. And we're going to do a magazine.
Shit.
A
I feel like we're
special-
really behind the gun on that.
I don't know. I think this art show is quite a bit of work, actually, just thinking about it and whatnot. So we'll make it. I know we'll make it happen, and that's, I think, maybe behind the gun, and I suppose we could have started it. We have all the content and stuff, but
Yeah, I guess we're like probably not.
we just released issue 4 really not that long ago.
Yeah, I guess not.
In terms of like what we've put out in the past versus what we're doing now, I think is like pretty good. I don't doubt that we'll have, after this art show, we'll be beginning to work on that
Yeah.
magazine, right? It's like, get this out of the way, boom. That's like a consistent, that's the thing is, with what we're talking about, I think that's what we need to do. Put out the magazine, or start on the magazine pretty much right after we start thinking about that once this art show is out of the way, which is only a week away, and
Yeah.
then it'll be done, and that will be lifted off of our minds, and the sole focus can be on this magazine. And I think if that's our sole focus, it won't take long for it to be reality too. So
No, and it'll be easy for it to go. I think like what I'm struggling with right now is like I have that move coming up. Like I'm going to like Montreal, so there seems like there's like a hard deadline, and it's this other stuff, and it's actually really not an issue. I think it's where I was with everything. It's just it wasn't organized, so you're just like overwhelmed by like all this stuff, and you haven't prioritized anything, and you haven't laid it down. So I took the time to do that yesterday, and it seems a little bit more clear and easier to manage.
1 hour, or something. Probably, I don't know. You probably didn't take too much, or maybe it took 8 hours. I don't know, but whatever it was,
like 45 minutes.
45 minutes. Just that's a really good point. There is that sometimes just starting it, just getting, even just like making the InDesign document that's at the right size,
Yeah.
because that's work that needs to be done, and it takes time. But even just doing that, it's like, oh, okay, I can see now it's not impossible. I can do this. I did this much in 45 minutes. What can I do in a whole day?
Yeah.
And so that's good. Yeah, I think that's great.
Well, and probably with the magazine, like really we can just slate a weekend and bang it out. I guess like for me, I just want to have it ready or like printed before I go, so we can like do some cool promotional stuff and put it out in a meaningful way.
When do you go?
I think I'm going to take my layoff with the day job on August 10th, if that works, and then probably stick around for that weekend. And then, yeah, so like August 14th, August 13th.
You're leaving pretty quick. Yeah, I didn't
Yeah,
realize. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, man.
Well, I guess worst case scenario is we have it before you leave, finished, and then you're able to promote it in Montreal.
Yeah.
And there you go. And I'm able to promote it here in Edmonton.
Yeah, it'll be good.
Yeah.
We'll just work together remotely. Yeah, it's going to be weird.
Yeah, it is. Kind of. I don't know. I'm hoping I can make it down there. Tara wants to go down, and I do, and I'm actually more responsible, so I think I can make it a reality. And but then I'll
go down to visit or to live.
Yeah, visit for now.
Oh.
Although I guess we'd be visiting a lot with her family, and
Oh, she has family down there.
spend a day with you, but that'd be more visiting, less about the magazine. Hopefully we can do this magazine shit from different sides of the world, which I think we can,
I
because
think without a doubt.
but I would like to actually move somewhere, so but we got a little bit of time. But I don't know.
Man, I'm gonna hustle you hard to move to Montreal.
We got a lot of questions that we got to think about, and
Like me and you, or just
no, me and Tara, and,
yeah, life in general.
and Devin too.
Yeah,
Give some context with that in the next episode.
yeah, yeah, man. Like the struggle's real, but like I think just in terms of like Edmonton, like I really feel at some point I'll come back, but I don't feel like I would appreciate Edmonton for what it is without having left for a bit.
No, I think it's always good, just even a change of scenery.
Oh yeah,
What's
man.
like, I don't see what the problem is there. There's a whole world out there, and people are like saying, like, you're not gonna get anything if you leave. I hear this shit, like, and so I'm not just making this up. People seem to get mad, especially the arts community, if you leave Edmonton. Like, some fucking, let people do what they want. There's a whole fucking world out there waiting for you, and you're just sitting here moping around this fucking city, and it's like, it's not like an insult to Edmonton if somebody leaves. It's just they need something new in their life.
Yeah, like uh, I really love Edmonton. I think there's a lot of good components to it. I really feel it's a beautiful city that's coming into its own, but that attitude of like still in Edmonton, it's like it's almost nationalistic. Like
Nationalistic.
yeah, that's that's the word I'm going for. Where it's just it's just weird. It's really really weird, and yeah, like that attitude around it, and fuck you for leaving, and we tend not to celebrate the people that have left Edmonton and made it big. And I don't think people necessarily who leave Edmonton and make it big necessarily always tip their hat to Edmonton. There's not a lot of songs where it's like, "Eat town." Yeah, I don't know. And I also just like don't get, because the other thing that you bump into here sometimes, it's there's, this is forever ago. I can't even like remember what it was for, but it was this short film was produced, and I went to the opening, and a bunch of people had contributed on it, and like the director, it was all like produced in Edmonton, and like the director was like a piece of shit, like just like a horrible fucking person, but like still in Edmonton, and like everybody's like, oh yeah, they're a big deal. It's like, well, like if they're a big deal, then like why did they never leave? Like Edmonton's really cool, and it's coming into its own, but it's still like a very small pond, and like why wouldn't you want to step it up and like try to take on like a larger scene, or make it outside? And like just because you leave Edmonton doesn't mean you're abandoning it.
Yeah. No, I don't think so. I think you just experience more in the world. So it'd be interesting actually to have, I don't even, the Still in Edmonton thing. That's like I guess a brand, or I don't know where it comes from.
I don't know. There's some pretty hip sweatshirts.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be cool to talk to them actually about this. What we're talking about now.
Actually, I had this like idea because
I don't know what they're, because they maybe too. I don't know what they're trying to portray. To be honest, it seems like it's that, but
well,
I don't know.
I think a part of it is that Edmonton's been talked down to for so long. Like I'm proud. I'm not proud. Yeah, no, I'm proud. Like I'm proud to be from like Edmonton, and for like a long time, like the type of work that I was doing was very much focused around promoting like Edmonton and like artists. And I think because it's like Edmonton has been talked down to so much, that that's where that kind of comes from. Because yeah, there's plenty of times where I like leave Edmonton and people are like, where are you from? And you're like, oh, Edmonton. And they're like, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. And you're like, what the hell do you know about my town, man? You don't know nothing. Sorry to hear that. I'll slap you in the mouth. But I think there's like that, and like Edmonton being like dirt city and like a piece of shit, and like Edmonton, and that I think it's a contrast to that. And like my ideal for like Edmonton is that it'll eventually become a city or community where as a creative you don't have to leave to make it, but it's just not there yet. Maybe it is. I really don't feel that it is. And also, but at the same time, I think the time that I'm leaving Edmonton isn't necessarily the best time to do it, because it's really accelerating and there's opportunities, and like Edmonton is still very much a place where if you're willing to work hard and have a good idea and you're not a piece of shit, that people are going to rally behind you. You know, like there's a reason why like a lot of companies or brands or like meaningful things start up with Edmonton.
Yeah. No, I think, yeah, it's like, but not to take that personally if someone decides to, because like you say, like, I think anywhere, even if you're from New York, you have to leave. I think, like, for your own, like, you don't have to, but what's the word what I'm trying to say here is that it doesn't matter where you're from.
No.
And if you want to have new experiences, you know, then you can have those outside of your city, and that can be a positive thing, and it doesn't have to be. It just seems that it's very one-sided view on this, on leaving, when it's so much more than that. It's, you know, it could be someone just, hell, they could be from that town or something, or their grandma could be needing, I don't know, love and affection, or I don't know what it could be. So many things, and it just can't be placed on one that you just don't like Edmonton and you think you could make it big somewhere else.
Yeah, like 100%. Like that has nothing to do with it. And I think for me, like there's that idea of like leaving and growing and developing and coming back with those lessons, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, there's just not. I think Edmonton's a really good community to build things from the ground up, which, you know, me and you've been doing for the past ever, but there's not necessarily too many opportunities where you can get on with like a firm that's doing good work with like a larger city like Montreal or whatever. There's like a little bit more opportunities for that, and to be in a position where you can learn from more seasoned professionals, I suppose. And kind of like one more thing that you touched on in terms of like talking to the people that do the still in Edmonton sweatshirts is like, I think what would be really cool, and there's the time crunch on this might be a little too tight, is to, because I'm going to be gone from Edmonton to like 4 to 5 years, and I think it would be cool to do a bunch of these like podcast interviews with creatives here that are kind of coming into their own, and then with the intent of following up with them in like 5 years when you come back to Edmonton and see how things have progressed and like where they are.
That would be cool.
Should send out a bunch of emails.
Yeah. Get it started.
Yeah, maybe. Just slate them all for one day.
Yeah.
Well,
that's all, folks. Talking about lots. This might be 2 episodes.
Yeah, we're going to chop it. No, it's like an hour. I think it's an hour right on the money.
Tune in next week when we talk about hemorrhoids. Don't include that, please. No, go ahead. I'm comfortable in my own skin. I don't have hemorrhoids, by the way. Well, not that I know of. That could be the intro.